Now, I realize that I didn't show these examples in class, so hopefully this will help you on your homework tonight. In this case, we are adding numbers together and we have irrational fractions. And you'll remember that to add fractions together, you must have a common denominator, right? All right. So let's take a look at what we've got. So I'm looking at this first fraction right here, and I see, well, this last fraction really, and I notice that we have 4 times the square root of 1/3. Well, the square root of 1/3 is going to end up being the square root of 1 times the square root of 3. And you know we're not really allowed to have irrational numbers in the denominator. So we've got to rationalize the denominator here. And in order to rationalize the denominator, we know we have to multiply by the square root of 3. And so we'll end up with square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which is 3. Square root of 1 times square root of 3 is square root of 3. And we still have 4 of them. Well, let's take a look at our other problems here. We have 3 times the square root of 3 over 1 minus 2 times the square root of 12 also over 1. And right now you probably are going to notice that square root of 12, that's not in simplest radical form. We can simplify that further because we know that the square root of 12 is going to be equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 4 is just 2. So the square root of 12 is going to be equal to, how do we write that? 2 times the square root of 3. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. So we have 4 times the square root of 3 over 1. I'm just rewriting everything else because I have the room and I just enjoy writing numbers, as I'm sure you do too. And we realize that we can't add these together yet because we do not have common denominators. We need to get a common denominator. In this case, what is going to be the common denominator? Well, it's going to be 3. So that means I'm going to have to multiply this fraction by 3 over 3. And that will get me 9 times the square root of 3 over 3 minus, and again, multiply 3, multiply by 3. And so we'll get 3 times 4, which is 12, times the square root of 3 over 3, plus 4 root 3 over 3. And when you add fractions together, you'll remember that you add the numerators together, and the denominator remains the same. So we know the denominator is just going to be 3. Well, I have 9 root 3 minus 12 root 3. So right here we are ending up with negative 3 root 3. So negative 3 root 3 plus 4 root 3 is going to be 1 root 3, which is just the square root of 3. So that is my final answer. Just to take you through this one, what I would suggest you do now is pause the video, try the next problem, and then see if you do the right steps. So now that you've paused the video and gone through your own problem, let's see if you did it right. So I'm going to start by doing the same thing. I'm going to rationalize that denominator. So we have 5 root 1 over root 10. And root 10 does not have any square factors, so we can't simplify that further. But again, we cannot have square root of 10 in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by the square root of 10, multiply by the square root of 10. So we're going to get 5 times the square root of 10 over 10. Well, right away I can see I have a 5 and a 10. Is there a number that goes into 5 and 10? What number goes into 5 and 10? 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So 1 times root 10 is just root 10. 10 divided by 5 is? So my first fraction reduces to square root of 10 over 2. And let's rewrite everything else. And we're going to write it as a fraction. So we have 8 root 10 over 1 minus 3 root 40 over 1. And just like my previous problem, root 40, the square root of 40, that is not in simplest radical form.
Okay, what's the secret to getting the...
Go, hold on a second. It's okay. So the 40, we can get into the simplest radical form. So what goes into the square root of 40? That is a perfect square. Well, square root of 4 goes into 40, and 4 is a perfect square. So the square root of 40 can be written as the square root of 4 times the square root of 10. And the square root of 4 is just 2, so we have 2 times the square root of 10. 2 times 3 is 6. So we have 6 root 40 over 1. Now let's rewrite everything else around it. So we have over 1 plus root 10 over 2. And again, to add two fractions together, you have to have a common denominator. And in this case, the common denominator is just going to be 2. So what am I going to multiply 1 by in order to get 2? What do I multiply 1 by to get 2? 2. Right. So what I multiply the denominator by, I have to multiply the numerator by. So 2 times 8 is 16. So we have 16 times the square root of 10 over 2 minus, same thing, times 2 times 2. So we get 12 root, oh shoot, that was 10. The 10 came here. I'm sorry for that. Over 2 plus root 10 over 2. And now that we have a common denominator, we can just add the numerators together. 16 root 10 minus 12 root 10 is 4 root 10. And 4 times the square root of 10 plus the square root of 10. Well, how many square roots of 10 do I have?
5.
5. So I end up with 5 times the square root of 10 over 2. So I hope that's helpful for your homework tonight.